welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a tutorial on another skin series video. I wanted to show you guys how you can get more of a luminous glowy finish while using a matte foundation. I love this look because there's so much glow and life to the skin, but we used a matte foundation and we're using all powder products. There's no cream at all, and I think the skin still looks really nice and juicy and just like lifelike, reflects back a ton of light. And the great thing about when you do this technique with a matte foundation is that you're gonna get a lot more wear time than you would if you were to use like a more dewy finish foundation or cream products. So you get the best of both worlds with this technique. So I hope you guys love this as much as I do. Before we get into it, please make sure that you guys subscribe to my channel so you can stay updated whenever I upload new ones for you. Please also be sure to come follow me on Instagram because that's where you'll find me whenever I'm not actually here on my channel responding to comments. And I would also love it if you guys would leave some comments down below. Let me know some other types of videos you want to see in the skin series that I'm trying to make a series out of on my channel. So now we can get into the tutorial. The most important thing when you are doing a look like this one, which is so focused on the base, is you want to make sure that you always cleanse and moisturize your skin prior to makeup application. Give your moisturizer some time to really sink in, and then once you've got all that situated, since we're going to be doing like a matte foundation and making it look dewy and natural, I really think one of the best things you can do is apply a face oil. So today I'm going to be using the La Mer Renewing Oil. This one you have to shake up, and I'm going to do one drop on each part of my face. So one on my forehead, one on each cheek. I'm going to blend it in with my fingers, not a lot of oil, and just really push the oil into the skin so that it's not laying on top. And you're gonna want to choose an illuminating primer, something that's gonna peek out from behind the foundation and just really give you a nice luminous glowy base. So I'm gonna use the Physicians Formula Spotlight Primer. I love this one. I think it's really beautiful. It leaves the skin nice and canvas-like, and it just creates a really nice luminous glow. So I'm gonna apply this all over the skin. And then if I want a little bit extra, I'll just take some more, rub it in between my fingers, and just kind of press it on the higher points of the face, just so that those are a little bit extra luminous. You can always tap it under the eyes. This will just brighten up under the eyes and you'll have to use less concealer. I really feel like once you put the oil and the illuminating primer down, you can really see the biggest difference in the base. It just makes everything so much more luminous and alive looking, and that's what we want. We don't really want to mix the oil and the illuminating primer in with the foundation because that does kind of play around with the finish and it will kind of wear down on the longevity of the matte foundation, which is kind of the appealing point of matte foundation. It generally lasts a lot longer than dewy foundation. So by putting all of this on the skin first, we're gonna disrupt the finish of the foundation a little bit less than if we were to actually mix it in together. So the foundation I'm gonna be using is the L'Oreal Freshwear Foundation. I've been loving this. It does set down to more of like a natural satin finish, but if you were to use a mattifying primer, it is like truly matte, whereas on its own it's more of like a satin matte finish. So it's not an overpowering matte, but it's really great. It's medium to full coverage, so it's got nice buildability and all of that. And this routine will go for any other matte foundation that you guys think is your favorite. I'm just going to show you how you can take something like this and make it a little bit more dewy and just more lightweight looking on the skin. So we're going to be using this. I use the shade 475. So once you've given the oil and primer just a couple moments to really set on your skin, you can go into foundation application. I always like to just do a pump on the back of my hand and dot it on the skin. And then I'm gonna buff this foundation in with a cosmetics foundation brush. And what I like to do is just kind of stipple the product around just by kind of bouncing the brush up and down, moving it around the skin. And once I kind of get the product more evenly dispersed all over my face, then I'll go in with the brush like this and really start buffing it. And once you start blending this in, you will see that even though we have the oil and the illuminating primer on, it's like the foundation still looks really luminous and fresh, but it still has more of a soft powder finish to it rather than being like truly like oily and dewy looking. And the primer just peeks out, and you can see a lot of really beautiful light reflection on the high points of the face especially. The foundation brush should be just grazing the skin. You don't want to be using too much pressure and really pushing it, because then you're going to move too much product around and you're going to get gaps in the foundation. So you're really just letting the bristles graze the skin, and you're just going to lightly, continuously buff it in. So we are also going to be using the L'Oreal Infallible Full Wear Concealer, but this is matte and it can actually kind of look drying and crepey under the eyes. So we want to put something underneath it that's just going to give like a light veil of milky coverage that's going to still bounce back light and just kind of help that concealer reflect back as much light as possible so that it doesn't look so drying and sunken in under the eyes. So I'm going to take an under eye illuminator. This one's from Wander Beauty. It's in the shade medium. And I'm gonna place it right here just to kind of camouflage darkness on the inner corners. And then I'm also gonna dot this right under the eyes. I'm gonna use my fingers to blend it in. And this has such light coverage that it's a great base for anything that you wanna put on top of it that's gonna be, you know, more full coverage and more matte, because this is just going to reflect back more light and just keep that under eye looking really nice and youthful. Okay, now we're gonna go in with the Full Wear Concealer, and I use the shade, what shade do I use? Amber, 385 Amber. So with this concealer, because it's matte and it's full coverage, you need to be a lot less heavy-handed with it. And I'm still gonna apply this like right here just because I want a little bit of coverage there just to kind of brighten up any darkness. And I'm gonna put it on the outer corner of the eye to brighten up darkness right there. And then I'm just gonna do a little bit on the darkest part of the under eye. For me, that's like right here because I get a little bit of shadow. So I just wanna brighten right there and just kind of like conceal that shadow. With a concealer like this, because it's very pigmented, it's a little bit thicker, what I actually really like to do is just give this a couple moments to set on the skin before I start blending it in, just so that the concealer is a little bit easier to work with and blend in. So while I'm waiting for this to set, I'm just gonna quickly fill in my eyebrows and then we'll go in and blend in the concealer. Now I'm just gonna use the concealer end of this foundation brush from IT Cosmetics, and I'm just going to, again, do the same motions. Instead of kind of, you know, pulling the product all around the eye area, I'm keeping the product where I placed it and just slowly softening it out by kind of bouncing the bristles of the brush where I placed the concealer. And I'm just gonna like soften the edges, but I don't want to move the concealer around because then I'm just moving the coverage from where I placed it initially. And I really want to keep the concealer where I placed it. And you can kind of bounce back and forth between your fingers and the brush just to kind of warm up the concealer a bit. But you don't want to be moving the concealer all over the face because then you're just moving the matte concealer all over and it just defeats the purpose of concealing small areas of the face. I really do think that one of the biggest game changers with concealer is applying it exactly where you need it and then giving it a couple moments to really set on the skin, because then it's not going to be as, you know, slippery and wet. It's going to be slightly more tacky and it's going to have a little bit more grip to it. So it's going to stay where you put it, and you can just kind of use the warmth of your fingers to kind of heat the product back up and just softly blend it out. But you will get a much more natural and, you know, precise finish to the concealer by just giving it a moment to just settle down before you go in and blend it. And here's the base. You guys can see the high points of the face are still reflecting back light. We have nice matte under eyes, and the skin is overall, you know, a nice matte finish, but it has a lot of life and glow to it while without looking like oily or wet. So with setting something like this, I really think one of the major keys to this look is the Laura Mercier Glow Powder. Now, this is really similar to the original translucent powder from Laura Mercier, but this one has a glow to it. So there is a golden pearlescence to it, and it mattifies the skin while also still reflecting back light. So it's great for those of you who want a more glowy but still mattified finish. I'm using a crown brush for this. I'm really making sure that every bristle of the brush gets coated in the powder. And then I'm gonna tap off the excess because you don't wanna over powder because then you'll look chalky. And what I'm gonna do is just lightly tap this powder all over the face. Another thing to note, guys, is when you're powdering, you don't want to be doing swiping motions. You're really just lightly tapping the bristles along the skin. So versus, you know, rubbing the product like this as you powder, you want to, now I need to get more powder. You want to be bouncing it lightly all across the skin so that you don't disrupt the base underneath. I just quickly threw on a lip color and a little bit of bronzer, just some powder bronzer. I used the NARS Casino Sun Washed Bronzer, but I wanna show you guys how you can make powder blush and highlight really pop on a more matte finish and just make powder products look a little bit more luminous. So I'm gonna use the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette, and I'm first gonna go in with this highlight right here, and I'm just gonna pick it up on an Eco Tools Precision Powder Brush, just like lightly dusting it. You don't want a lot of this, just get a tiny, tiny bit. You can tap the excess off on the back of your hand. And what I'm gonna do is just lightly apply this to the apples of the cheek and kind of pull it back. But like I said, you really don't want a lot because you don't want this to be frosty. But I'm just gonna put a tiny bit just so that the cheeks are slightly more luminous. I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of this one actually. I'm gonna mix these two. Like that. I'm gonna tap the excess off, and then I'm going to apply this right on top of the highlighter. And then you're gonna get like more of a glowy apple of the cheek. So really just swirl the product right on the apple and then slowly blend it back to meet your bronzer. And it doesn't look flat and matte. It really will just give that cheek the illusion of like a juicy wetness, but it won't actually be like a cream blush. So you really do get nice shine and glow like you would from a cream, but it's powder. So now for highlight, I'm gonna use this one in the top left corner. And I'm gonna take a Laura Mercier finishing powder brush, just really concentrate the bristles of the brush on there. And then I'm gonna kind of smooth the product out just so I get a nice even dispersion of the product. And what I'm gonna do is just use this to really buff the highlight into the skin. And brushes like this are a really great way to get the powder highlight buffed onto the skin rather than like sitting on top of the skin and just laying there. This really gives the illusion of more of like a buffed in cream highlight, but it's with powder. Okay, so now you guys can see by like stippling and then lightly buffing the powder highlight into the skin, it just gives you more of like a soft airbrushed highlight rather than like, you know, thick stripes of highlight all over the face. So this is more of like a soft focused powder highlight, and if you want something that's a little bit more intense and wet looking, then I'm gonna show you guys a really great trick for that. So what I use is any type of setting mist, typically one that's not pearlescent, just because if you do put a pearlescent face mist on top, then you will make this more of like, you know, kind of like an oily dew, which I love, but I want this to be more of a glow rather than an oily looking dew. So I'm gonna use the Lila Bee A Glow Face Mist, and I'm just gonna mist this all over the skin. Give it like a minute or two. Don't go in when the product is still wet. So wet? Why does my accent randomly change all the time? Just give it a minute to really dry so that you don't go in when the product is still wet. Now, once you've done the mist, you can see the face is a lot more reflective. It has a lot more of an all over glow. And if you guys want to intensify the highlights, like especially, you know, under the brow bone or on the high points of the cheek, along the nose and things like that, then once you've let the face mist kind of dry and set on the skin, then you can go in with your powder highlight one more time, and it'll really give you like that wet, shiny look. So go in with a brush that's a little bit more precise this time so that we don't have the highlight going everywhere. So I'm gonna use this one from Bare Minerals, and I'm just gonna pick up that gold highlight one more time. Again, always tap off the excess, and we're just gonna lightly highlight the high point of the face. And look how much more strobed it makes the skin. I'm gonna take it right under the brow. I'm gonna use my fingertip and just lightly highlight right down the bridge of my nose, but look how much more intense the highlight is because it's really gripping to that setting mist. That is the finished look. So we used a matte foundation, but we still got a lot of glow and luminosity to the skin. But if you guys can see, I hope on camera it translates the way it does in person. The skin looks very like juicy and luminous, but it doesn't look oily. It has a ton of glow and reflection, and especially for using, you know, a matte foundation like this to get this much like life and luminosity to the skin, it's really amazing because this is gonna last so much longer than if you were to use a more like truly dewy foundation, or if you were to actually mix the oil and illuminator in with your foundation, because by having those underneath the foundation itself and not actually mixed in with the formula of the foundation, you're gonna get such better wear time, and the skin will stay nice and matte. It's not gonna get much oilier than this, so you do get really great glow and like gorgeous luminosity to the skin without having to sacrifice wear time. So I think this is perfect for those of you guys who love matte foundations because you love the wear time, or you just have like a favorite matte foundation and don't want to buy another foundation. I thought this was a really fun way to kind of switch up the finish of your foundation without having to actually go and buy a new one. So I thought that this is like the perfect routine for those of you who are maybe more on the oily side and don't want to mix an actual oil in with your foundation, or have to, you know, like I said, go and buy a whole new foundation. You can still use your favorite foundation and just kind of play with the finish a little bit and get different looks. So I really hope you guys found this helpful. I would love to continue doing a skin series for you guys. So I'd love to know some other types of things you'd like to see in terms of skin, like other types of finishes you guys would like to see, or different ways you can transform foundations. Whatever you guys would like to see, please leave some suggestions down below. I always take your suggestions to mind. Like, I always like hearing feedback from you guys. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about any of the products that I used or anything like that, feel free to hit me up in the comments down below. I always do my best to get back to every single one of you guys. I will have all the products listed and linked in the description box for you guys as well. And I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching this one. Bye guys.